Like many of the stories of God's people, this story takes place in the desert. We can't fit the whole desert in our church, so we have a piece of it right here in our desert box. The desert is a very dangerous place. The wind is constantly blowing and changing the shape of the desert, so it's easy to lose your way. Very little food grows in the desert, and without enough food, you can die. There's also very little water in the desert, and without enough water, you can also die. During the day, the sun is hot, and you must wear protective clothing to keep your skin from getting scorched. At night, it's very cold. You must wear protective clothing to protect yourself from the cold. The desert is very dangerous. People do not go into the desert unless they have to. When the great flood ended, the creatures of the earth went to the four corners of the earth to fill it up with life. Many of them settled by rivers, and eventually people settled by rivers, first in small cities, small towns and villages, then in great cities, like the city of Ur. In the city of Ur, the people believed that there was one God for every flower, every plant, every tree, every day of the week. But there was one family who believed that all of God was everywhere. They weren't sure about this, but this is what they believed. Abram and Sarai were part of that family. When it came time to move to a new city, Abram and Sarai packed up their belongings. The old people went. The children went. They brought their sheep, donkeys, and camels, and they traveled along the river Euphrates. They stayed close to the river so they would have water for their livestock and water for themselves to drink. The river also guided their way to the city of Haran. It was a very long journey. They knew they were getting close to Haran when the people of Haran came out to greet them. And then their journey had ended. Abram liked to go out and look over the sky and the desert sand. One day when he was doing so, God came so close to Abram, and Abram came so close to God that Abram knew what God was telling him. God was telling him that Haran was not the city for him and Sarai to live in. They were to move on and find another place to live. So Abram and Sarah went into the desert. This time they did not have the river to guide them or give them water to drink. They moved west in the desert towards Canaan. Abram climbed up the hill towards the place called Shechem. And he prayed to God, and God was there. So Abram built an altar to show that God was in this place. Then they moved on their journey and stopped at a place near Bethel. Again, Abram prayed, and God was in this place. So he built an altar, Surely all of God was everywhere. And they continued on their journey. Till they ended up in Hebron, near the giant oaks of Mamre. One night, God called Abram to the edge of the desert, and as he was looking out over the sand in the sky, God came so close to Abram, and Abram came so close to God that Abram knew what God was telling him. God told Abram that he and Sarai would be the parents of a great family that would number as many as there are stars in the sky and grains of sand in the desert. Abram laughed because he and Sarai were very old, too old to have children. God also said that they were to change their names to Abraham and Sarah, which they did, but they did not think that they would have children because they were too old. One night, 3 strangers came out of the desert. Abram invited them into his tent. Sarai mixed 3 measures of flour, which was a lot. She gave them bread and meat to eat and milk and water to drink. And the 3 strangers told Abram that he would soon have a child. Abram laughed because he knew that he was too old. Sarai heard the men talking, and she also laughed because she knew she was too old to have a child. But soon after the strangers left, Abram and Sarai did have a child. And they laughed again. And they named their child Laughter. The word for laughter in their language is Isaac. When Isaac was grown, old Sarah died, and they buried her in a cave near the giant oaks of Mamre. Abraham was sad and lonely without Sarah, but he knew he had one more thing that he had to do, and that was find a wife for Isaac. So he sent his most trusted servant back through the desert, back past Bethel, and past Shechem, all the way back to Haran, where he saw Rebekah by the well. Rebekah was courageous and kind. She helped the servant give animals water and gave water to the servant and invited him to her home for dinner. At dinner, the servant told Rebekah and her family about Abraham and Sarah and the great family. And Rebekah decided she wanted to be part of that great family. So she made the dangerous journey through the desert, past Shechem, and past Bethel, till she met Isaac. Soon after, Isaac and Rebekah were married. Old Abraham was so old now that he also died, and they buried him in a cave near Sarah and the giant oaks. Soon after, Isaac and Rebekah had children. And their children had children. And their children had children. And until finally your grandparents had children. And your parents had you, and now you're a part of the great family that numbers as many as there are stars in the sky and grains of sand in the desert. I wonder which part of the story you liked best. I wonder which part of the story is most important. I wonder where you see yourself in this story. I wonder if there's something that we can leave out and still have all that we need. I wonder what part of this story you'll take with you today.